Good morning, folks. I'm Dan. Out here in the shop Sunday morning, warming up a little bit nicer day. Had a few things I needed to get done. Needed to finish up some flanging dies and things like that. But what I wanted to talk about today a little bit was tooling, pretty much specifically for the mill, but a little bit to the lathe. Prompted by this for a couple reasons. There's been kind of a discussion going on one of the lists I follow that is discussing somebody was looking at a mill, and I know a lot of people are looking at to add a mill to their shop or a lathe, whatever the case may be. But in the case of a mill, the questions come up as to whether to use R-8 collet systems or Morse taper tooling. And it seems like, just like on everything else on the internet, everybody jumps out and gives their ideas and supposedly the good reasons for doing that. My suggestion is going to be R-8 tooling. And another part of the reason that I got involved in this is I was looking at mills today to add to my shop, or to add a new shop, because the mill drill that I've been using is one that I converted to CNC years ago, and works well. You know, it's made me a lot of money over the years. I ran it as a manual machine for several years, and here just 3 or 4 years ago I converted it to CNC, although I still maintain manual capabilities with that. It's still got hand wheels, and I can disconnect the stepper motors to it, so I have manual control. It's not as smooth as a standard full manual machine, but it kind of gives me the best of both worlds. It's a compromise that I needed to make to be able to do what I've done with it. So it depends on what you want to do. Morse taper tooling I don't think is the proper way to go for a mill. The reason being, it's a little bit more expensive in some instances to do, and I think it limits the capabilities of your mill a little bit. If you go to R-8 tooling, which this is R-8 tooling here, it's kind of the industry standard for the smaller machines, even though when you get into the real small machines, you do have the option of Morse taper tooling. But in the size that I use in my shop here, which is started out as my mill drill, R-8 tooling makes a whole lot more sense for several reasons. One is it's less expensive. You can buy imported collets or even real collets relatively expensive. Some of the other tooling systems are not as readily available and are a little bit more money, at least here in the US. So I think the R-8 system is the way to go. Plus you have more options to expand without completely scrapping well, I won't say scrapping, but you have more options to upgrade that tooling on machines for your home shop machine. Once you get into production machines and you get into cat tooling and that type of thing, that's a little bit different discussion and all its own animal. And you run into the same thing when you're talking about older machines, some of the older industrial machines that the guys are putting in their shop. So the reason for R-8 tooling is less expensive. It seems to be more readily available. There's more of it out there. And if you combine that with a 5C system, you can do pretty much everything you want to do on a milling machine, in my opinion, and for home shop. No, we're not talking production stuff, but for the home shop and what most of us are going to use it for. If you go to 5C collet systems, you can go up to, I think, 1.25 inch with 1 1/8 or 1.25 inch with 5C. And I use 5C systems a lot on my spin index that I converted to CNC as a 4th axis. But standard spin index, a lot of the tooling blocks and everything that you can buy, you're going to get in 5C. And it gives you up to 1 1/8 capabilities. The R-8 system, I really do like. Now, I've gone along and I've begun to upgrade my system, and I started this a year or so ago. I still don't have a tremendous amount of tooling, shifting it over the way I wanted it. But what I've done is I've gone to Tormac style tooling, which is, these are Tormac tool holders. This is an ER system, an ER collet here, and it's one of Tormac's. And this is just their end mill holder, their fixed holder. Whereas the ER system, you have a little more versatility, a little more expensive, but you do have a little more versatility. So what I started to do is switch my systems over for the mill pretty much to this Tormac system as much as I can, and as I go along, because it's a 3/4 inch shank. It shoulders here on the outside, so it gives me the capability to not have to change as much tooling. And shifting over to the CNC stuff, it's great because I can set these tools up, have them set up, pop them up into the collet, and they're consistent every time, or consistent enough for my needs that all I have to do is put them in the mill, and they're in there and they're interchangeable. The advantage this has given me is I've just expanded an R-8 system, which is R-8s will still handle pretty much everything that I want to put in the mill, and if I don't have Tormac holders for it, I can still use just a standard R-8 system. So I've done this with the idea that I can not only expand my system and it'll cover both manual machining and CNC setups, but I can also expand it when I add another mill, which if I didn't which if I do indeed add another mill that I was looking at this morning, why this system will transfer right over to it. And I'll just go to this Tormek system or the 5C collet system because that mill will have 5C tooling. I think it gives you more versatility, and I think it's a better system. So if you're only going to have one small milling machine forever, then a Morse taper system may work perfectly acceptable and do everything you want for it. But if you're planning on expanding or may change, go to bigger machines within your shop, something like that, I think 5C makes a whole lot more sense. So that's kind of my outlook on that, good, bad, or otherwise. Morse taper tooling, you're going to use Morse tapers through some stuff, especially on your lathes. My Sheldon's Morse taper number 2 in the tail stock. It's short Morse taper number 5 in the headstock, which for a home shop environment, that's a relatively sizable investment if you're going to go to actual fives or Morse taper number 5. Usually that's adapted down to Morse taper number 2 or number 3 in the headstock, so you can still use readily available tooling. But I very rarely use those capabilities. I've also set up the Sheldon with a 5C collet chuck and a 5C hand wheel chuck too, as a matter of fact. So I've got capabilities there to use those 5C systems across the line with that. The little Atlas lathe that I'm rebuilding, Atlas tail stock, is Morse taper number 2. Same way with their index heads and that type of thing. So in that respect, I have Morse taper tooling too, and we'll add more Morse taper tooling. But to me, that's kind of a specialized tooling. I think you're still better off with the idea of expansion down the road with a 5C collet system. So my take on it, good, bad, or otherwise. So I hope this at least gives you a little more to think about. A lot of the specialized tooling, and if you do this for very long at all, playing in your shop, you're going to build a lot of your own tooling. So there's some stuff that will take Morse taper. I've got a little Morse taper number 1 interchangeable center, cheap import. You know, I bought this specifically for using in my index head because I wanted a set of centers when I converted that spin index. Well, I wanted a tail stock on that too, so I built a tail stock, and it accepts number 1 tooling. So the only thing that I will probably ever use that for is with that live center there. But I have that option. It was relatively inexpensive, so you're going to use Morse taper and you're going to use R-8 systems. But I think the most versatility you're going to gain on a vertical milling machine is with 5C collet systems. So hopefully that at least gives you something to think about. So hopefully I've helped you a little bit there, or at least muddied the waters a little bit more. So if you find that helpful, why go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And if you hit the bell notification, you'll know when I put out a new video. And if you find these useful, why hit that like button. Leave me any comments below. And thanks for taking the time to watch.